Okay, before we start this, I'm gonna give you guys a heads up. I'm a bit tired. I've burnt myself out with building. I set up this place for y'all. Yeah, I did some practice with the colors and stuff to do gradients. I've not done it in like a while, and I will set up a link to that, which is what I used to make these. I'm not used to using this many colors usually. This was very quick building because I've been spending most of my time building on Jack's server, and as you know, I did a few of these things. I even made this hallway for the people who commented. Thank you again. I'm very grateful. I might need to add a few names. I just need to double check. And I'm also planning to do circles as well. I'm just planning to do a bunch of things, and honestly, I'm not doing myself any favors. But first, I'll show you what I've been up to. I made this guy using armor stands. I will probably do a tutorial on this at some point. I made him. I made the cyberpunk city. Well, still need to finish it. I made these guys walking around, but this is the one I'm most proud of. We even have Murder Bot over here. And I'm planning to teach you guys as much as I can. But honestly, I'm exhausted. I've been putting off making this episode for a bit. But hey, that's not really much of a problem because I'm just showing you guys so far everything I've done. And I still have to finish, so you guys can understand why I'm very busy and haven't been doing much. This one I still can't do anything with. It's kind of ugly in my opinion. I still gotta experiment a bit more with it. That's the name of the game, I guess. Experimentation. But hey, there's gonna be 5 sections to the video, okay? All 5 of these sections, you'll have... Each of these 5 sections, well, will be marked off with a different variation of my skin. So I will get onto it. The first section of the video is the one that I wanted to do, and then I saw a bunch of comments. It is the texturing, right? You have this little build here. I made 2 versions of it, of course. One without the texturing, one with the detail and texturing. I will show you the texturing and how to do the detail, because last time I showed you how to detail, right? And I want you guys to understand, this was just an example to show you how to use these blocks to make your things look less flat. By no means it's kind of over, you know, it's overdone, but that's the point. It's just to show you can squeeze a lot of detail into things, even if it's small. With this one, I'm going to build a little shack, similar to that one, but this time with the plans of using this. And before I do that, I will show you the plan I did for this. There's a few variations of this I did, but here's the all-around plan for it, right? To add the bumps, the indents, and just the normal location of the blocks. Pretty much, it just shows you how everything's supposed to look. Right? If you look from an angle, you see there's bumps, flumps, and inputs. Not inputs, indents. Lovely. I can't English. So, I'm gonna start off picking my blocks, which I will get to that next time. So we probably want our plan, which is pretty simple. Right? And then it will start off with this and then end up with something like this. So, this is just like a basic plan. You can do this. I don't usually do it like this, right? Usually I use shapes like that, you know? Just generic shapes to make these buildings, right? But sometimes you're not gonna do that, right? That's guaranteed. Sometimes that's just not something you might do. So I'm gonna take the blocks I used over here. Okay, and now that I have these, let's start. There's a few ways you can do it. Let me just... There we go. Now I can actually... There we go. Right? This is your first support. There's a few ways to, you know, do it, but this is the way I think it looks nice. It's not too detailed, but it's not under detailed. There we go. And now we have supports, right? So the basic idea is I will show you how to use the plan. I'm going to replace these later. I'm going to show you how to use these plans to basically go from a simple little building, like for example this, and eventually bring it to something more like this. So these holes I left, you can break them and place them at random on the thing. The important part is you do this, right? So now you got your basic indents, shapes, all that lovely jazz, and you just put some buttons on it, right? No particular order, it's a little random. This was something I was taught before, well, the person teaching me to build kind of poofed out of existence. It's sad, I know. I would have loved to learn a lot more, but this was pretty much all I got to learn. But yeah, pretty much that's the idea. And once you have your basic shape, you know, pretty much it will go from this little lot to, well, a full shape, right? That gives you your indents, all that lovely jazz. And over here, I'll get to that, pretty much, right? So we'll go from this, right? It'll go from this all the way to maybe this, but we still need to break, you know, the shape up. Add your bumps, add your divots, all that lovely stuff. Because if we don't, well, it's gonna be flat. So this is the kind of way to do detailing, but it not to be, well, too loud, right? It's like it's a solution to a problem someone else had with that one, right? That one was just an example of how to, you know, use the detail so you can avoid doing texturing in a way, but you don't always want to do it, right? Sometimes you just want to do this, right? This one's a bit of a longer one. I'm very much burnt out with building, but I'm trying my best. I should be taking a break so I can build more for Jack, but, you know, gotta do that content. Now that I've gone from this flat little thing, we add our buttons, which, you get it. You get it, right? And now the next stage is to, well, separate this, which we're probably gonna need to raise up by one, and basically just have a kind of support, because that's just the base, for example, right? I'm using this to show you how to do walls like this, but this is just like the base for the building, right? It's just like the foundation, which is funny because you can actually put a lot of things in here. But yeah, pretty much that's pretty much it's like that, right? And yeah, that's pretty much all you gotta do with that. Now, let's move on to the next stage, which, you know, it was pretty simple. It's just like texturing. For example, if I go over here, you'll see a decent map of what I did, but pretty much this one is just all cobble. I don't know why. You grab your buttons, your stone buttons specifically. You grab your moss, you grab your whatchamacallits, you even grab these. And now, it's as simple as placing moss somewhere and thinking, how would that moss move, right? So I'm thinking it would move like this a little bit, right? Put a button there, and then so on and so forth. And the next stage of this would be, of course, that, right? But yeah, that pretty much gives you the idea of how to do this, right? If you have any complaints, please tell me. I will make sure to make a follow-up. But pretty much that's the way to do it with moss. Moss is pretty simple to texture with, you know? Because you just need to think, how would it move? And that's just with stone. I'm not 100% sure when it comes to other blocks. I know there's another way to transfer with moss. So I'm gonna go over here real quick. Bam, bam, bam. Yeah, and you can actually use, you can actually texture with moss if I remember correctly. Something like that. That's like a good way to make a ground texture, right? It's pretty small, but yeah. But yeah, pretty much that's just the basics of how to do that. Doesn't really matter too much. I don't need to build the full house. Right? But I'm going to do it anyways, because, well, can't leave you guys hanging. There we go. I'm not going to do the you know, the texturing, because I'm leaving that up to you guys to... I don't know. Pretty much, as you know, it's very simple. It's not that hard. You literally just figure out what point the moss would be less dense, and then, see? And where the moss is dense, of course, there's going to be cobblestone, mossy cobblestone, my favorite block. And eventually, there's going to be a point where there wouldn't be, right? So that point is where you add your stone bricks. And so on and so forth, rinse and repeat until eventually you get something that looks a little like this. I'm sorry if I'm not explaining this very well. I'm just very, very tired. I'm exhausted, man. My last video didn't even do good. But yeah, pretty much you can accomplish the same result with moss and stuff. I'm just doing it like this to show you an example. I'm showing you how to work with moss, at least. Like, usually you just need to think from where the most dense part would be to the least dense part, right? It's like working your way out. That's how the moss is. And sometimes you can use vines to add a little texture to everything, you know? It's not much, but it's something. Yeah. It shows you how to do that. Okay, the next part of the video, I'm just going to show you these roofs, right? To answer your question from last time, to connect roofs, there's a few ways to do it. Of course, there's the usual way where you have your one roof that's going this way and then the other going that way, and then you pretty much just want your main points to connect, right? Wherever the stairs can connect, if there is stairs, you try your best to find the connection point. As you see here, the connection point is right there. Let me just get some orange blocks. Yeah, pretty much. So basically, these have like a bit of a curve. For example, if you're using, I'm going to call this roof type A as your main roof, the curve. It's going to have a bit of a curve when it comes to the connection, as you can tell, right? You got a little bit of a spiral going on with the curved roof. And that's pretty much the main thing. You just need to connect these points. With other roofs, for example, this version of Type A, which uses the Type C roof, that one used Type B type B. Type C roofs, you have a more obvious pattern, right? Because of the way these roofs are, it's not much of a curve. It's more of a wobble. Yeah. There's a bit of a wobble with this one. And over here, you have, of course, your type whatever with your other type whatever. This one, you know, the straight point, there's a much simpler pattern that you can see very easily, right? It's like a little hook every single time with the slabs, right? And that's about the connection point, which is pretty simple. And then over here, it's the infinite amount of simple, right? You got this angle, and then you add the other type of roof, and then yeah, you got it. Over here with this type of roof, it's pretty simplistic because the connection points, of course, are leading up to a square shape. It doesn't always end up this way. For example, up here, this roof would have a different shape entirely. And this one, it's kind of multi-choice, the shape that this would end up in, right? This one's multi-choice. You could have a curve, or you could just have another box. So it's pretty much up to you with that. It's not that complicated. But yeah, pretty much it's just like figuring out what pattern the roof will make if you connect the type A and type B, you know? And to continue off the roofing, towers. We all love them. We all have a love-hate relationship with them. There's a few ways to do them. For example, you could go with a mushroom shape, you know? I will show a couple images because, as you know, I'm a little burnt out. I don't have the energy to build them. I'm just showing it off, the idea. I might make a second video where there is a mushroom. I don't know. But pretty much, there's a few ways to do it. You could have a whatchamacallit, so I'm just gonna use Axiom to make my life a little easier, I guess. Right, you could have your mushrooms, which there's a few ways to do this. You have your mushroom roofs, which, well, not many people like. The reason I made it so big was so it's clear. Usually it might end up smaller, a little smaller, but yeah, I'm just showing you. You might end up with a mushroom roof, which looks a little like that. You might end up with a cone maybe instead. You might end up with a cone kind of roof. Again, I'm sorry that I'm not building this. It's just I'm very tired. The definition of burnt out with building. I can't help it. And there's a fourth type, but I don't remember it right now. I will get back to when it comes to the fourth type. And of course, with the last type, it's literally just... The best way to explain it is you literally got a watchtower. Oh yeah, the other type is a lighthouse. Instead of building these, I'll show you a few examples. But pretty much, either you could end up with a watchtower or a lighthouse with the last two. Or you could end up with a mushroom or a tower with a pointed roof. Or a tower with the witch's hat, if you remember the witch hat roof that I showed you the other day. But yeah, pretty much that's how it is. Yeah, lovely. Okay, there's a few ways to do that. Thank you for being quiet now. Anyways, there's a few ways to do this, right? There's a way to do it without this, but honestly, I don't have the energy to figure it out right now. I literally got this for you all, and I'm going to send the schematic in you know, the description possibly. But yeah, pretty much you grab your block, which we might end up with something pink or cyan. Right? So, what's this? Oh. The sad part is a lot of these blocks only work up to, you know, upwards. Wait, let me... That's actually really cool. I could do pixel art very easily, it seems. I might make a poster of Pigeon Man. You'll get context when you get context. I'm not gonna explain who Pigeon Man is. But pretty much, yeah. You grab this, you start from your darkest block, which might end up being this, and you work your way to something... a little darker. I know there's like a lot of blocks you can't get like this, right? Because there's the command block, which if you don't have the ability to get, you can just, you know, I'll show you two versions, right? I'm gonna show you the best way to test these. Right? Right? When it comes to the texturing, you don't want to look at the blocks for the texture of it, right? Yeah, I know it's a little misleading. I'm still trying to figure that out. But pretty much, you don't look at the texture of the block, like the little individual pixels. You look at the block's color as a whole. The reason that is, I don't know why command blocks is in this, is because the further you get away, the color matters a little less and less as you get further. I did it so much better before. But yeah, pretty much, you look at it as a color in general. You don't look at it as a texture. Also, this also works apparently for making pixel art, you know? The specific kind for you got a bunch of different shades of gray here, and you can make map art, you know? Or you might end up wanting something a little more orange, right? Screw you, lava. Anyways, bam. I'm feeling I would like to go slightly more... No, that's just too much. I think I would like it to go from yellow to something a little more red. Right? It doesn't work all the time, but when it does, it sure as hell works. For example, I don't know if this one will work. So far, it is. And I shall give you some practical uses for this, right? Right? You could use this texture to make a beehive, maybe, or a bee-themed building. Or you could use it to make a, you know, a bit of a heating metal, you know? Or something, like you can use that even for a geyser, you know? And, oh boy, there's an entirely different layer to this, which I'm going to try my best to explain. I've never personally tried using it, but it involves glass, right? We all know how the glass works, right? We grab our, we grab our colors, and the way this works, right? You see, if I add that, it becomes a different shade of blue, right? It becomes slightly... I can't. Anyways, with this, we might want it to be darker, or... Wait, let me get some more glass. I don't have enough glass for this. Or the right types of glass. But yeah, pretty much, this would become more slightly lighter blue if you use light blue, but it's still blue. But you can also add another layer, which will probably change how it looks more. Right, now that looks a bit like water. I fucking love how that looks like water. Anyways, and with this one, it becomes slightly more purple. Or more cloud-like. I don't know why it's reflecting right now. I don't have energy for that. Or you could add green. Pretty much it just... What I'm trying to say is, basically, it adds a bit of a tint to the color. We all know how that works. Especially if you make skins. You're just adding a tint over it. Making it slightly more greenish. Like, if I go over here, right? You see how there's this doesn't quite transition? If I were to add a form of blue over that, and then fly up, right? See how that's slightly more purple, but it's also just about right amount of pink? Well, I can do this. And now if I fly up, see? It changes the color entirely. Because I know we don't have this exact shade difference between blocks, because look at that. These blocks are two different shades, even though it's barely visible, right? I'll show you better with... I'll show you better with this block, right? We got our classic glowing block. I'm gonna make it 3 for each side. Right? And then add some blue. And on top of that, I will add some of that. Check that out. You see how one is slightly more red than the other? One is more green. Well, this is a case where you take... I don't know what it is exactly, but pretty much that's how the glass portion of this would work. Glass can work with you or against you, but you gotta remember, sometimes doing this with glass where you add make a color completely different by adding glass to it, sometimes it doesn't work with your builds, you know? Especially, it only really works in some cases. Like pixel art, or making really, really big builds that you don't ever need to really be close to. You get my point. It doesn't always work out. That's why I'm showing you the detail and stuff. But yeah, pretty much, that's how that is. And I'm gonna be honest, I don't know if you gonna skip over this part. I don't even know if you guys are gonna watch this. Anyways, next part of the texturing, it's the shading, which I'm gonna show you real fast, right? I'm gonna grab this, 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 and then this. That's... Oh yeah, sometimes blocks have two different textures. You'll understand in a second here. Usually this would be a little more straight, all that, because it is that. So pretty much, you can go from that to that, and in some cases, one block might end up being just enough to end up texturing it. For example, this block has a unique property where the sides are slightly darker than the top. Right, now, this is pretty simplistic, I know. I'm just showing you how to do it, right? You can already tell that it's getting darker as you get down. There you go. Right, and then the next stage, of course, I'm working from light to darkest. I don't know why, but usually it would be reversed. Right? But I'm just showing you the point. The point being, the texture of the block, like the look of it, doesn't really matter all too much when doing it from, oh, it's gonna look good from a distance. Like for example, if I go a certain distance, you don't even see the texture, you just see the shading, right? Anyways, basically that's how it's supposed to look. It gets darker as you go up because the top has a lip, right? You gotta be aware of your dark points. Like, for example, if this was pointing in the direction of the sun, of course this side would be brighter and the sides and back would be darker, right? But I'm showing you a case where it's like the sun is from above, and yeah, you get it. With this, it's pretty simple, and that's just how you do shading. With grays, there's a lot of ways to do it with other blocks. For example, purple here. Usually you would go from that as the light part, and that as a dark point, right? That would be where the shadows are. I can actually show you an example of this. Let me just grab these blocks. Well, sometimes it doesn't work out. Sometimes you just gotta experiment. That's like the entire idea behind this. You gotta, you know, experiment with this. You gotta figure it out as you go. Sometimes it doesn't work out, sometimes it might look amazing. For example, I think it might have looked better if I went from like these purples, from black to pink. Maybe it would have looked better. But yeah, pretty much that's just my examples. It's not that hard. You just gotta look and figure out what would work. Like for example, over here, a lot of these I cheated with, but a lot of these I actually went on there and figured it out, you know? Still don't like how that ends with a command block. That kind of makes life a little difficult for those, you know, trying to do things. And sometimes it might not work out using that because it doesn't have every block, sadly. I don't know why. It's missing a lot of blocks. But yeah, it takes a lot of trial and error. But there is one tool I really love to use instead to figure out my block gradients. I use the gradient helmet. The gradient helper. Sorry, I'm horrible at English right now. Usually that is something you can do, but other cases you can do pretty simplistic things using that. But Axiom just is a bigger help because it's much more useful, you know? And over here, I'm gonna be honest, I was tempted to do the whole spectrum, but there's actually only really one way to do circles. It's using this chart. I'm gonna flash on screen here for a second. Yeah. Pretty much. And well, I guess I didn't need this many parts of the video. Well, I guess thank you for watching. If you watched to the end, I'm gonna be honest, I am burnt out to the max. Demonic horse. I'm burnt out to a point where I can't even build. Thank you all again for commenting and possibly liking. You have done me a big favor. There's a few ways to do it, and I will study some color theory again, because a lot of the times I've never actually really needed it much, you know? Also, I really am confused to why color theory was recommended for this. It's all one type of block. Like, I said to use one wood type, right? I don't know. But thank you again for the judgment. I will study color theory so I can make another video that's better with, well, texturing. I just have a few examples here that I wanted to show off, and I tried my best to do this, even when I was burnt out. But yeah, glass can change the texture very easily. I might make my own version of this at some point in the future with every variation of block, including if you add glass to it. Because I don't know if anyone did that. Also, that water would have been normal ice, but I don't even know why that was on here because that would just melt. Anyways, thanks for watching. Bye-bye.